Hello, folks. I'm Josh McGee, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Gateway to Soccer Show. Thank you so much for tuning in to this brand new project that I hope to get off the ground. My plan for this show is to cover soccer across the entire world, soccer in the United States, and of course, soccer where I'm based at here in St. Louis. A couple of housekeeping things before I get started. Gateway to Soccer Show, it's a work in progress with the title. It's just something that I came up with. Of course, Missouri is the gateway to the West, and we have such a great soccer culture here in St. Louis. I thought it'd be a good name, and also one where I don't think it's been taken quite yet. But it's a work in progress. I'm happy and open to suggestions, but right now, that is what I'm going with. And as far as how often the show will be out, I plan on releasing a new episode every Friday covering a myriad of topics and also hoping to have a great set of guests from week to week. And as of course, as you can see, for those of you who've been watching my interview series, I've updated the home studio just a little bit. You can see right above me, of course, my only St. Louis FC scarf. We'll get a little bit more into them and their wrap up to their season. Of course, the wrap up to them as a club a little bit later on in the show, but have to represent locally here. And also a couple of jerseys behind me. To my left, the perfect jersey for the Halloween season, for Halloween weekend. That, of course, is the Chelsea away jersey from, I believe, the 09-2010 season, one of the first jerseys that I picked up. And, of course, over my other shoulder would be the away jersey for the U.S. men's national team when they were in the World Cup back in 2010. Of course, at least lately, I think one of their best jerseys, of course, with the old logo and with the sash across the front. So a little bit of glitz, a little bit of glamour to this new project. And let's get started with my opening monologue. And we're going to start off with here, the EPL. That's how I really got into club soccer. Of course, there was always the World Cup, but when I really got into soccer, it was by following Chelsea and following the EPL. And it's been a bit of a strange start to the season in the EPL. Of course, we're a couple of months so far into the season. Of course, thankfully, we are having a season, even though there are no fans trying to get through the pandemic. But the results have been pretty shocking, actually. And if you look at the table, it's not your usual suspects right now at the top. And what do you think has led to that? This is what I think has happened. There has been a severe lack of emphasis on defense in the English Premier League. It's been happening for a couple of seasons now. But in this crazy, 2020 pandemic era, it has really come to the head, especially here at the beginning of the season. So last season, after the first 4 games weeks, we're about 6 games weeks, I believe, now into this season. But last year, after the first 4, the EPL was averaging about 2.82 goals per match. So far this season, through the first 4 match weeks, the average was at 3.79 per match. And at that time, the pace was set to be the highest scoring campaign since the 1929-1930 season. Fun fact, Everton scored 80 goals that season and were relegated. So there were plenty of goals being scored back then. But at that current pace through the first 4 weeks of this season, that's where we were headed to. One of the highest scoring averages ever, almost 4 goals a game. Of course, now maybe it's been a little bit different. We've seen a couple like 0-0 draws or low scoring matches for the past few weeks. But as far as early in the season, think of all those results, such as, Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2. We had Tottenham and Manchester United's crazy scoreline. There have been a lot of big scorelines with a lot of goals being scored. And I think what has led to that has been the lack of defense, and especially at the big 6 clubs. Think about this. Only one of the big 6 clubs so far this season has kept more than 1 clean sheet. Which club would that be? Chelsea. And think of all the defensive problems that they had last season, and they still have. You think about the 3-3 draw away to West Brom, and the 3-3 draw at home versus Southampton. This is still a club that is struggling on defense, and they lead all big 6 clubs in clean sheets so far this season, which is kind of shocking to me. Now, of course, there could be some other factors to why defense has been poor so far in the EPL. You think about the no crowds. Obviously, that gives a benefit to away sides in terms of their attacking spirit. They don't have the crowds to have to deal with. Attacking players, maybe getting the benefit of the doubt when it comes to more calls right now this season. And of course, play's been getting better in terms of speed and attacking defenses and such. That could be improved as well. But I think what has been the big problem, especially at the big 6 clubs, which is my focus here, is the fact of the lack of defensive signings in the transfer windows. Let's start with the champions in Liverpool. My concern with Liverpool, even last season when they were destroying teams, was always the lack of depth in the squad. It seemed like they always had a strong starting 11, but if something were to happen, things could go for the worse. It didn't happen last year, but we've seen this year now, especially with the injury to Virgil van Dijk and now to Fabinho, that this team is a little bit thin, especially on the defensive end. And of course, Talked about the Aston Villa match where they just looked shockingly bad, especially on the defensive end. They're just not doing as well as they did last season, which was expected, but now they have some injuries to contend with as well. They didn't really bring anybody in, and now they look a little bit thin back there. Manchester City, again, great offensive team going forward. Think about like that 5-2 result versus Leicester City and all the goals that they conceded. They didn't really bring anybody in. They had some targets in mind, but all they ended up bringing in was Nathan Ake, who's a great young center back, but making the jump from Bournemouth to Manchester City. That's a pretty extreme jump right there. And also they brought in Ruben Diaz very late in the transfer window, but they still have Kyle Walker at right back, who might be, showing a little bit of rust there. And then left back position is still a big question mark for City right now. So their defense, much like last year, has gone down. Let's get to a couple other clubs. Chelsea, just talked about them with their defense. They were horrible last year. It really almost cost them a Champions League spot. And while they did bring in Ben Chilwell, the only center back they brought in was Thiago Silva, who is in his mid-30s, who's definitely not been playing multiple matches per week. It seems like he's on a one-match-per-week schedule. So again, most of the problems with Chelsea are still there, even though they've shortened up their goalkeeping position and, of course, brought in Chilwell. Manchester United, again, great offensive team. That front four, with Bruno Fernandes, Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial, and Mason Greenwood when he's in there, is just phenomenal. But at the back end, we're still seeing some of the same problems because they keep on trotting out Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof at center back. They didn't bring anybody there at that position. Yes, they brought in Alex Telles at left back, but he hasn't gotten quite up to speed just yet. So they're still deploying Luke Shaw. Really, it's just Aaron Wan-Bissaka at right back who can be leaned upon to have a good defensive performance. And, of course, we know about David De Gea, who seems to be declining every year now. So United, they have the ability to outscore teams, even if they concede a couple of goals. But sometimes in those bigger matches where the offense can't be leaned upon as much, their defense really could be the cause of them dropping some points this season. Then, of course, you look at Tottenham and you look at Arsenal. Tottenham, they let Jan Vertonghen go in the transfer window. They didn't really bring anybody in. They brought in Matthew Doherty from Wolves, who's a right back, but he's more of an offensive-minded right back. So they still have questions on the outside. And, again, with Jose Mourinho, he's a defensive-minded head coach. And if you don't have the personnel to work in that system, it's just not going to look good. Of course, I think about the 3-3 draw versus West Ham, where they were up 3-0 very early on, were unable to hold on. Then, of course, Arsenal, who have also had bad defensive problems. They did bring in Gabriel from one of the French teams in Ligue 1, but they're still trotting out David Luiz. And in terms of the outside backs, Hector Bellerin, Kieran Tierney, those guys, health-wise, are just not in the lineup consistently enough to get going. So looking at all those big six clubs and the lack of transfers coming in, I think that's what really has led to the struggle so far this season, has allowed teams like Everton, like Leicester, like Aston Villa, who have been a little bit more solid defensively, have been able to put up early results and get ahead in the table. In terms of those teams, do I really think any of them are going to finish in the top four? Everton have looked pretty good, but I think that once the big six clubs get going, I think they will be able to push them out, but you never know. Everton obviously were able to push Liverpool to a draw. Granted, VAR kind of got in the way of that one, but they were able to push them. So potentially there could be an upset, but I think the big six clubs will eventually get going, especially the likes of Chelsea, Manchester United. They have so much offensive firepower, and you saw it in the Champions League in midweek, which we'll get to here in a moment, that they really can bully some teams. So my expectation is things will get going, but if you're looking at one or two matches that could decide the title this season, it's going to come down to defense. I'll be interested to see if teams change policy in the January transfer window and try to pick up some defensive options. But right now, it's a free-for-all. And the smaller clubs have taken advantage of it. And who knows, maybe they build up a big enough lead to get ahead and maybe qualify for Europe. So that's stuff to look out for in the EPL. Of course, coming up this weekend, there's some really great matches. Obviously, the biggest one on the docket is going to be Manchester United at home, taking on Arsenal. Manchester United looked great midweek. Again, all of that attacking talent. It's going to be tough for Arsenal to stop on the road. But I think under Mikel Arteta, they've been an improved side so far this season. Of course, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is a great talisman. Alexander Lacazette has been looking great as well. So Arsenal do have some guys that can keep pace with United. I still like United, though, to pick up all 3 points. Second matchup, Sheffield United will be at home taking on Manchester City. We've seen City so far in the EPL, again, struggle defensively. Sheffield, they don't blow your doors off offensively, but I could definitely see a possible, 0-0 draw, 1-1 draw, somewhere where they were able to pick up a real clutch point against a big club and really frustrate City on the defensive end. So definitely going to be a look out there and see if City can rebound. They had a good Champions League match this week as well. We'll see if they can pick it up domestically. Last matchup, a little bit of a fun one on Monday afternoon. Leeds United versus Leicester City. Leeds have come into the EPL. They're one of the favorites of the three promoted clubs to do the best. They've definitely looked like it. They've been scoring a lot of goals and doing an excellent job of pegging teams back, and even losses, such as the opening loss, the 4-3 result versus Liverpool. They have really pushed some of these bigger clubs. I look for them at home to be really exciting, but of course, Leicester City have looked just as good as well. Jamie Vardy still scoring goals, and some of Leicester's key offseason signings have looked great as well. So that would be a fun little matchup between two clubs. I believe both are still in the top 5 in the table. So technically a top of the table clash right there. So those three matches I would definitely look out for this weekend. But again, if there's an improvement to the defenses among the big 6 clubs, I think we're going to see a bunch of them start to hike up the table here real soon. All right, so let's talk Champions League. We are through 2 match weeks so far in the UCL. Again, a lot of teams that you would expect to be near the top of the group are there, but we've also had quite a bit of surprises and a few disappointments. I'm not going to break down each group individually as of this show, but maybe sometimes we can provide an update, especially maybe halfway through the group stage for each group. But I want to go over some teams who have looked like early favorites so far, some of the bigger clubs, and I also want to go through some of the disappointments and go through some of the teams that have been struggling, and also, again, kind of just look ahead to some upcoming fixtures that could help decide some spots in some groups. So let's start with the early favorites, and I think you have to go right to the reigning champions. Bayern Munich so far have looked phenomenal in their group stage matchups. They open with a dominant 4-0 performance against Atletico Madrid, a historically great defensive side. Then their second matchup, they were able to eke out a 1-0 victory versus Lokomotiv Moscow. Bayern are just so loaded. Again, Robert Lewandowski isn't even really doing anything in these matches. It's been all the young talent on this club. Guys like Joshua Kimmich, Leon Goretzka, Kingsley Coman. I mean, these guys are just setting up each other and creating some of these phenomenal shots. Again, getting a clutch goal late there. Russia is usually a tough place to play at that earlier start time, but Bayern were able to pull out the 3 points. But again, I go back to that Atletico Madrid match where they just had them going every which way. Some fantastic passing, some great shots, and some great goals. Bayern right now, even without Alphonso Davies, who's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with some torn ligaments in his ankle, the young talent, again, is just leading this club, and they look to be the favorites once again, even after winning the title the previous season. Next up, I want to highlight FC Barcelona. Now, Barcelona have been struggling in Spain. Have had a lot of problems off the field, but as far as the Champions League is concerned, they have opened up with a couple of victories, the biggest one being just this week, a 2-0 victory on the road versus Juventus. Now, granted, Cristiano Ronaldo did not play, but this is still a big victory to, again, take first place in that group as of right now. Lionel Messi got on the score sheet, albeit with the penalty, but Ousmane Dembele got the opening goal. That's a guy that they need to get going, along with Antoine Griezmann up top. It was interesting to see this team keep a clean sheet without Gerard Piqué, who was out due to suspension because he picked up a red card in the previous match. I still think there's some key roster decisions right now, guys getting into the starting 11 that need to be addressed. It was disappointing not to see Serginho Dest in the starting 11 for this matchup, but he did start the previous Champions League match. Of course, the young right back here for the U.S. men's national team. But for right now, even with the struggles domestically, they're getting it done in their group. They're in the lead ahead of Juventus. And, you know, again, if you've got Messi, you're always in it. The last few favorites that I want to talk about are the 4 English clubs who have all been looking great so far. That, of course, would be Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester United, and Manchester City. So far, those 4 clubs have scored 20 goals combined in the 2 matches that they've each played and have only conceded twice. I would say of those 4 teams, United have the most impressive victories. They, of course, are in a pretty tough group with PSG and RB Leipzig, but they beat PSG late on a late goal by Marcus Rashford, and then Rashford followed that up with a hat trick and a 5-0 dominating performance against Leipzig at home. Again, this United club, when they got their offense going, you got Bruno Fernandes, Rashford, Martial, Greenwood, Pogba when he's on his game. Again, it's a very tough team to stop. Leipzig, of course, don't have Timo Werner anymore. offense is just not as good, and they were able to take advantage of that. But of course, the big win was on the road versus PSG. It's a good win to pick up to stay ahead in that group. As far as other victories are concerned, you've got City, who beat Porto in their group. Chelsea looked great, of course, against a lower-level team, but you get goals from Werner, you get goals from Ziyech. Pulisic gets his first goal as well. They could be firing on all cylinders soon. Liverpool are a very tough group, and they were able to pull out a victory versus Ajax. So, again, the English clubs who have been successful in the Champions League are doing good to start. And with United ahead in their group and Liverpool as well, I think they were in the tougher groups. I think Chelsea and City have relatively easy groups. We could be seeing all four clubs advance to the knockout stage, which, of course, would be great for ratings, great for fans of the EPL, and, of course, could set up some really top-level matchups. So, English clubs doing great. The reigning champs doing great. Of course, Barcelona, who are always advancing to those later stages of the UCL, are doing great. So no shockers there. But when you move into some of the disappointments, that is what can be particularly shocking. Of course, the big one being Real Madrid. Real Madrid have not had a victory so far in their first two matches in the Champions League. They started off with a very shocking 3-2 loss at home versus Shakhtar Donetsk, and then they followed up with a 2-2 draw versus Borussia Mönchengladbach on the road in Germany. They just don't look comfortable right now. Obviously, it's been a thing since Ronaldo left that they just don't have as much firepower offensively, but as you can see, they were able to score multiple goals in both these matches. It's really been the defense. Sergio Ramos was suspended for the first match, so I can kind of see why they had certain problems there, but he was inserted into the lineup for this match, and they just really weren't able to stop Mönchengladbach in and around the box. It just didn't seem like they could get comfortably on the ball, and of course, Mönchengladbach were able to take advantage of a couple of missed plays there, but they've dropped some points here in this matchup. Of course, in that group as well is Inter Milan. And Inter Milan, of course, have Romelu Lukaku, who's doing pretty good, and they have a lot of pedigree as well on that club. So dropping all of these points, and again, Shakhtar Donetsk, they usually qualify for the knockout stage as well. So they're in last place in the group right now, Real Madrid. So they're going to have to get it together, have to pick up some goals from the likes of Karim Benzema, some of the other younger players in that club who haven't gotten going quite yet if they want to advance into the group stage. Another disappointment, I would say, is PSG. Now, obviously, PSG did win this week. It took a little bit of more effort to pick up a win against Istanbul. But the big thing being, they've already lost to United, one of their home matches, and now Neymar limped off and had to be subbed off in this week's match. We don't know the extent of his injury yet, but of course we know Neymar's had a lot of problems with injuries over the past few seasons, and to lose him once again would be a huge blow for PSG. Again, in that group also, RB Leipzig. I know they just lost to Manchester United big, but of course, last year they were semifinalists. So the pedigree and experience is still there. So if PSG don't get it together and Neymar's out for a long period of time, they could be in a fight to get out of that group with United already looking to be the head of it. Lastly, I want to talk about Atletico Madrid a little bit more. I've already spoken to them about the 4-0 beatdown that Bayern Munich gave them. Well, Atletico then followed that up by barely getting a 3-2 victory over RB Salzburg after Salzburg, I believe, had the lead at one point. An encouraging sign for Atletico was they got 2 goals from João Felix, their young stud. But again, defensively, conceding 6 goals through their first 2 matches, it's just not what Diego Simeone and Atletico Madrid are known for. So they're going to have to fix things back there if they want to going forward. I still think they'll advance out of the group, but if you advance second, you got to play first team in from one of the other groups, and that's going to be a tough matchup for them. And if they're not firing on all cylinders on defense, I don't think they're going to make it past the first knockout stage. So those are some of the favorites, some of the disappointments. Looking ahead to this next week, because again, because of the pandemic, it's kind of shrunken the Champions League schedule, and there's not so many breaks in between group stage matches. We'll have another slate here coming up next week. Some matches to look out for first. I have Atalanta versus Liverpool scheduled. If you have not watched Atalanta play, I highly suggest watching the Serie A club. They are a fantastic offensive-minded team. Watch them versus Ajax this week, a very thrilling 2-2 draw where they were able to come back and pick up the point. Then versus Liverpool, we already know about how great Liverpool is on both ends, but this will be really a huge test for them without Van Dijk. They've played a couple matches already, but this will be the biggest test going up against a great offensive club in Atalanta. So I'm excited to see that matchup. Real Madrid versus Inter Milan. Again, both these clubs fighting for position right now in their group. You got Madrid in last place. I don't think Inter are, I mean, again, all four of these clubs are pretty close together. So it's a big match in terms of Inter keeping Real Madrid down or Madrid climbing back up to the table. You got Lukaku on one side. You got all those great Madrid players, of course, on the other. So really interested and looking forward to that matchup as well. A couple of other matchups to look forward to. Club Brugge, who have actually got up to quite a good start in their group. They're going to be taking on Borussia Dortmund. Always fun to watch Dortmund, Erling Haaland, and of course, Gio Reyna, the young American stud, who got his first start in the Champions League this week for Dortmund. Excited to continue to watch those two young guys develop. And lastly, RB Leipzig versus PSG, a rematch of last year's semifinal. And again, an important match to claim second place in that group and to put yourself in a better position to advance. So first couple of games weeks in the Champions League have brought some expected results, but also a lot of surprises and a lot of slow starts for some clubs. It'll be interesting to see over the next few weeks who can set themselves apart and set themselves up to advancing to the knockout stage. Okay, I'm going to shift gears from talking about soccer abroad to talking about soccer right here in St. Louis. I'm going to start off by talking about these guys, St. Louis FC. Of course, they had their season wrapped up in the USL Championship playoffs with a loss to Louisville City FC, which of course meant the end of their time in the USL Championship. Of course, it's very disappointing, the folding of the club. You think about all of the work they were able to accomplish on the field and all of the great work they were able to accomplish off of it with the charity work that they were able to do in conjunction with the St. Louigans, building upon the great soccer culture here in St. Louis, reaching out to the community as well. Again, this was a phenomenal job by the club in just a short amount of time of work. And of course, all of those great on-the-field moments, you think about making the playoffs for the first time, U.S. Open Cup run, and of course this season, making the playoffs out of the group of death on the final match day. Again, over the years, it's been a pleasure covering this club. I got to cover two great head coaches in Coach Anthony Poulos and Steve Trittschuh. All of the players that I got to talk to, you think about guys like Sam Fink, Kyle Gregg, Manuel Cavita, who have been here for multiple years, have been the backbone of this club and have been doing great work in the community as well. Just a phenomenal job by everybody at St. Louis FC. I'm going to treasure those moments, treasure those memories, and thank them again for all of the hard work they were able to do on and off the field. Of course, now we look towards the future, and while it's going to be a couple years till actual matches are played, we have St. Louis City SC to talk about. Of course, we've already had a couple announcements from St. Louis City SC about some front office hirings, but the latest announcement actually came from MLS, where they announced that St. Louis City SC will be joining their esports league for the upcoming 2021 season. The club are going to host a series of virtual scouting tournaments the weekend of November 7th, with the winners getting the potential chance to be the club's official eMLS player. If you haven't heard by now, folks, esports is one of the fastest growing industries right now in our country. It's big in all of the cross of the sports league, especially in the NBA. I know they've been able to build a tremendous esports league for themselves. And of course, a lot of people get into soccer because of FIFA. So extending the fan base and getting people involved that way, it's a great opportunity. I know the USL did a little bit of a tournament type deal over the summer, expanding that and getting a bigger platform in MLS. It's a great opportunity for St. Louis City to attract more fans and to get in on this action. So I'm not the greatest FIFA player in the world, so I will not be participating, but good luck to anybody trying out for it. Again, it'll be interesting to see how they're set up and how they cover it, but it's a really fast growing industry. It'll be a big part of the MLS experience. Can't wait to see how City handle this and what it'll look like with them running the show. So latest announcement from St. Louis City SC joining the Esports League for the upcoming 2021 season. Now I want to talk about a great opportunity this upcoming weekend to take in some local St. Louis soccer. Club Atletico St. Louis will be wrapping up their 2020 slate with the friendly versus St. Louis FC's Academy Under-19s. The match is going to take place this Sunday at 3 p.m. at Lutheran High School in St. Peters. Again, great opportunity to see a couple of lower level sides going up against each other. Club Atletico St. Louis basically had their NPSL season wiped out, but I know that they've been playing a couple of matches versus some local clubs in and around the area. And of course, with the Under-19 Academy for St. Louis FC, they've been competing in their MLS's next season. I believe they are in third place in Bracket A, and they're coming off of a 5-0 victory in that. So they're kind of in season. Club Atletico repping things up for 2020, but it's an excellent opportunity to see a couple of St. Louis clubs here go at it, even in a friendly environment. Also, a really cool thing that will be happening on Sunday. Of course, this Sunday is the Day of the Dead, or Dia de los Muertos. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Big holiday, obviously, in the Mexican culture. And this match will feature two Latinx head coaches. You've got Ricardo Garza for Club Atletico and Louis Swisher for the under-19 St. Louis FC Academy. So great day of celebration, great day of soccer, and an excellent opportunity to check out some of the local teams. I hope to be out there, hope to get some post-match reaction from both coaches so I can put it up for next week's show. But again, if you got the opportunity, head out there, Lutheran High School, 3 p.m. This Sunday to check out Club Atletico and the under-19 St. Louis FC Academy. All right, for the last segment on this debuting episode of the Gateway to Soccer show, I want to talk about some of the bigger leagues here in America. And of course, I'm going to start off with MLS. MLS is wrapping up their season. Of course, we had the MLS is back tournament, but they were able to return to play, finish out what they had started at the beginning of 2020. We are fastly approaching the playoffs. We got a couple of weeks left. I believe November 8th will be decision day, the final day where all of the teams in the league will be playing to determine those last few spots. And right now, the tables are looking pretty interesting as far as who could be making the playoffs and some of the favorites from both conferences. So I'm going to start off in the Eastern Conference right now. Philadelphia Union and Toronto FC are the two top clubs there. You think about the Union, even after selling Brendan Arison, one of their top young players, to RB Salzburg, they're still doing a great job. Of course, they're built on a strong defense, and they got Andre Blake still back there between the pipes. And then you think about Toronto FC. They've been great for the last few years now. They got so much veteran pedigree, of course, but also they're being led by a couple of great dynamic offensive players. You think about Alejandro Pozuelo and Ayo Akinola, who's a great young 20-year-old striker here that I think has committed to the U.S. men's national team. I think he's leading them with 8 goals. So, again, they're getting great offensive production, and they got a ton of veteran experience up there. They're followed by Columbus Crew SC and Orlando City SC. I mean, they're still doing great even after the MLS is back tournament. They, of course, are being led by Nani, and then the Columbus Crew, again, also doing great offensively. You got Darlington Nagbe kind of holding down that midfield. So a couple of pretty solid teams behind the dynamic Union and Toronto FC. Interesting enough, in the Eastern Conference, Nashville SC in their first season have qualified for the playoffs. A tremendous accomplishment by them. I really liked their group at the beginning of the year because I thought they had a lot of great MLS veteran presence that was going to help them navigate through this season. Obviously, it didn't turn out how it was expected, but they still got it done. And also, of course, for here fans in St. Louis, Jack Mayer was able to finally make his debut. He's played in a couple matches. Congrats to Jack representing St. Louis on Nashville. And again, it'll be interesting to see how they do in their first season and in their first playoff berth. Right now, Inter Miami CF still competing for a potential spot. There are more Eastern Conference spots up for grabs because of the unbalance between the two conferences and the fact that 18 teams, not 14, will make the playoffs this season. So we'll have to wait and see if Inter Miami can join Nashville in the playoffs. But again, tremendous accomplishment by both clubs to be competing for a playoff spot in their first season. Taking a look at the Western Conference, there are some really heavy hitters at the top of this conference, led by Sporting KC. Again, a tremendously balanced club. You got Tim Mila in goal, great defense, and up there on offense, one of my favorite guys to watch, Alan Pulido, who came over from the Mexican League to Sporting KC as their leading goal scorer, very exciting attacking striker who's been leading them. Then, of course, I mean, always Seattle Sounders doing great things. Once again, on offense especially, you got Jordan Morris, who's playing some of the best soccer of his career. He is teaming up with Raul Ruiz and Nicolas Ladero to form one of the best front threes in all of MLS, maybe even better than what LAFC were able to put together. And right behind them are the rivals, the Portland Timbers, being led by, once again, Diego Valeri, Sebastian Blanco. Again, another great offensive team that's been able to carry over the success from the MLS's back tournament to the regular season. Right behind them are LAFC. Carlos Bailey, he hasn't been in the lineup consistently enough, but again, they got so much offensive firepower in that lineup that they've been able to make up for his absences this season. Also, you've got Minnesota United FC, who are a tremendously balanced team. They've been missing Ike Opara for most of the season, but they've been able to get by, especially because of the contributions on offense from a couple of those guys. And they're, again, tremendously stable team that can definitely cause some problems in the playoffs. One last note on the Western Conference. In last place, the LA Galaxy. When has that ever happened? Or if it happened, it was very, very long time ago. The Galaxy just don't have the star power that they once had. The Chicharito experience has not worked out. He's been hurt, and when he's been in the lineup, he just hasn't been very good. They don't have a lot of talent surrounding him as well. Coaching has been off the rails. It's just not something we're used to seeing from the Galaxy, where it might even take more than just next year to help rebuild that club. So it's shocking to see them in last place. They just got their doors blown off this week against them by Portland in a 5-2 loss. A lot going on there, and it's just surprising to see them at the bottom of the table. So those are some of the clubs competing for MLS. Again, decision day coming up November 8th to see who will claim those final playoff spots. Now I want to talk about the NWSL and the end to their 2020 season. They had the Challenge Cup in the summer, and they were able to come back in the fall and play a series of matches for the Verizon Community Shield, which was eventually won by Portland Thorns FC after they went unbeaten during their fall slate. Really cool thing, all these matches were available via CBS All Access, but a lot of the big matches were played on CBS, and in regard to those matches, they drew an average of 383,000 viewers. It's an awesome accomplishment by this league to continue through the pandemic seamlessly, and also pick up that viewership and to continue to increase eyes on the product. So great to see that the NWSL has been able to continue and has grown in popularity. I want to talk about a few news and notes from around the league. Start off with the big trade that went down over these past couple weeks. Crystal Dunn, who's been a regular in the U.S. women's national team, in a series of moves, she was traded first from the NC Courage to OL Reign for goalkeeper Casey Murphy and allocation money. Then the Reign sent Dunn to Portland for one international slot, their first-round pick in 2022, and allocation money. Dunn had requested to be closer to her husband, who is the head athletic trainer in Portland. But again, in terms of these moves, I think it's still a good deal for the NC Courage. They pick up a great young keeper in Murphy, who had a ton of experience at the Challenge Cup and is one of the bigger rising stars in the league. For the Reign, they pick up a clutch draft pick and, of course, some allocation money that they'll be able to use on players. But again, for Portland, I mean, the rich just keep getting richer. We saw that Portland were able to take out the NC Courage at the Challenge Cup. And, of course, they did great things here during the fall series. They already got Becky Sauerbrunn. They now add Crystal Dunn. Again, that roster is just completely loaded, and that defense is going to be excellent. Can't wait to see Dunn take her talents to Portland and continue to be a dominant force on the outside for them. Next up, I want to talk about the newest member of the NWSL who will start play in 2021. That, of course, is Racing Louisville FC. They acquired their first couple players in club history. Very exciting development. They made a deal with the Chicago Red Stars in exchange for full roster protection in the upcoming November expansion draft, which is really cool. I wish more leagues could do that. I could think of right now the St. Louis Blues could probably use some roster protection for this upcoming expansion draft. But in exchange for full protection, Louisville were able to acquire forwards Yuki Nagasato and Savannah McCaskill. Hope I'm pronouncing those names correctly. Nagasato scored 13 goals and added 18 assists in her 3 seasons with Chicago. McCaskill's bounced around a little bit since being drafted in the top 3 in 2018, but she made 5 starts at the Challenge Cup for Chicago, scoring a goal and 2 assists, and also had some playing time in the fall series and picked up a goal there. So again, 2 experienced forwards that Louisville were able to bring in. Nagasato has a lot of experience with the Japanese national team. And again, you see the track record there in just 3 seasons for Chicago. She was a big part of that club's success. So Louisville now, in the next few weeks, they'll be able to add more when the expansion draft comes up. Very exciting to have a new club into this league. Obviously, Louisville have had great success with their USL club. Now coming into the women's soccer game, excited to see what this new club can do. Speaking of new clubs in the NWSL, while they won't be playing, I believe, next season, making waves is, of course, the Los Angeles group, which has now officially become Angel City FC. The group confirmed the name last week and announced even more stars being added to their star-studded initial investors group. I'm going to rally off just a couple of names here. Billie Jean King, of course, the famous tennis pro. You've got Candace Parker, WNBA star, Lindsey Vonn and PK Subban, sports power couple, Lindsey Vonn in skiing, PK Subban in hockey, and James Corden, the CBS late night host. Already a star-studded group. Now, of course, everyone is getting on in this. This is going to be so cool. It's going to bring so much attention to the NWSL. And I don't know what it's going to be like in terms of the rules and regulations, but we could very much see an LA Galaxy type of situation before LAFC came in, where the Galaxy were the premier club to go to. They had so many stars, so much star power. I think we're going to see that with this new Los Angeles club once everything is set in stone. So again, very cool that they have now been brought into the NWSL. It's going to bring more eyes to the product, and it's going to be a very exciting development. So some big moves happening. We got an expansion draft coming up in a couple weeks. Good times to be an NWSL fan. Lastly, I want to talk about the USL Championship and the final matchup that we have that is coming up here this Sunday night. It's going to be the Tampa Bay Rowdies hosting Phoenix Rising FC. How did we get to this point? For the Rowdies, they were able to advance to their first USL Championship final since joining the league in 2017 by beating Louisville City FC 2-1 in Louisville behind first half goals from Zach Steinberger and Sebastian Gunzati. Louisville were looking for their fourth consecutive Eastern Conference title. Louisville have been tremendous. They're an incredibly balanced side, built on great defense. Of course, you got Cameron Lancaster and that great offense up top. But Rowdies scored early, completely changed the context of that match, got another goal before the halftime whistle. And while they conceded early an own goal, they were able to hold on to get that victory. Really good balanced side as well. Neil Collins, former player, leading this club to their first final. Really exciting for them. On the other side, you've got Phoenix Rising FC, one of the best offensive teams, not just this season, but over the past few seasons. However, they've been in a ton of close games. Every match so far in the playoffs has gone extra time for Phoenix. This latest one, they were able to advance to their second final in 3 seasons after being El Paso Locomotive 4-2 in a penalty shootout, which was highlighted by a great save by Zach Lubin in net after the sides drew 1-1 in regulation. Again, we know about Phoenix and the problems that they had this season, of course, with the incident with the San Diego Loyal. They forfeited their right to host the USL Championship final because of the incident and the points they picked up from that match, which is a good call, again, by them, even if the league were slow to act on it. But still, this is a really talented side with a lot of great offensive firepower that Tampa is going to have to find a way to somehow contain and, of course, assert their will and make sure they don't get pinned in their own end. So I think these are definitely two of the best teams in the league, not just in this season, but over the past few seasons, and it should be a very entertaining matchup. I thought it was such a big matchup that we needed a little extra help in covering. So here's my conversation with someone who will be involved with that match on Sunday. Well, I'm honored to be joined today by a member of the Tampa Bay Rowdies midfield who will be part of the team that takes on Phoenix Rising FC this Sunday night in the USL Championship Final. Happy to be joined today by Lewis Hilton. Lewis, thanks so much for joining me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me on.
So again, congratulations on making the final. You guys have gone through a tough road of opponents, no tougher being last week on the road in Louisville, going up against Louisville City FC. You guys were able to pull out a 2-1 victory against those guys. They were looking for their fourth consecutive Eastern Conference title. You guys were able to put a stop to that. Of course, the early goal helped out a lot, but besides that, what else were you guys able to do well enough to come out of there with the victory?
Yeah, I think the main thing that got us the result was how well organized we were out of possession. We pressed really well, the front three and then the wing backs pressing high. So, and I think it made it difficult for Louisville to play out because they like to play out from the centre backs and get it to the centre midfielders, and they weren't really able to do that well. And we kind of had a lot of possession, but didn't really hurt us too much and create too many like really dangerous chances. So I think, and obviously they're a really good side and got a lot of quality players. So for us to go to their place and really limit their chances, that's the main reason we won the game.
So obviously playoff games are always going to be close, but you guys have been able to pull out a lot of them over the past few weeks here. It started with the 4-2 victory versus Birmingham, where the match was tied 2-2 late, and you guys were able to get a couple of late goals. Then you move on to beat Charleston 1-0, which I know that you guys had lost them the previous 3 meetings before that, so you were able to get over that hump. And then, of course, the match versus Louisville. All of these close matches, all of these times that you guys have had to come up with clutch goals, how have you guys been able to handle the pressure in those big moments and in these close matches?
Yeah, no, I think we've played 3 really good teams in the playoffs. But I think what's really helped us is the depth of our squad. Quite often we have guys that come off the bench and score winning goals or contribute to us seeing out the game. I think that's a big part of our success this year is like just the depth of quality of players that we have. You have the starting 11, but you've probably got another 8, 9, 10 guys that could all be in the 11. And that's really, it's a real positive to have when you've got guys that can come off the bench and win you the game with goals and creating chances, but also guys that can come on and help you see out wins if you've got a lead as well.
So looking at the totality of this season, right, going all the way back, you joined the Rowdies. This is your first year with them. And of course, the season definitely didn't turn out as you expect because of the pandemic and how it threw everything off its hill. Coming into the club with all that had been going on and all the troubles, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your experiences with the pandemic down there with Tampa, how you guys were able to overcome some of the obstacles and how you guys were able to have a successful season.
Yeah, no, it's been a real crazy year. And for myself to join the club and really excited to kind of hit the ground running. And then we have a really good win up in New York, Red Bulls, and the Rowdies have never won up there before. So it was a really good, impressive win for us. And then for everything to get shut down like it did, it was definitely frustrating, but obviously during that time there's a lot more important things going on, so I understood it. But yeah, no, it was tough. It was definitely tough, and I think the hardest part for me was you just didn't really know when things were going to return to normal. When it started, if you knew it was going to be a certain amount of time, you're able to kind of deal with it. But when it first got shut down, I wasn't sure if it was going to be 2-week break or like we'll be back playing in a few more weeks or what was going on. And he was just kind of training individually and trying to keep your fitness going without really knowing when you'd be playing games again. So it was a really strange period, but I think the club really helped us. They gave us everything we needed facility wise and gave us sessions and different fitness sessions to keep ticking over. And I think we dealt with it really well as a club and a group of players. And I think that's the reason why we've been able to come back and do well after that break.
So obviously the biggest change when you guys came back was the schedule, right? You expect you have a myriad of opponents throughout the season.
Yeah.
You come back into this group stage. You guys battled with Charleston for first place the entirety of it. Also had some tough matches against some other opponents. Now that you've basically gone through all of it, you still got one more step, but you've gone through basically the totality of it. What do you think of how the season ended up being structuring?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot more important things than playing soccer. So I think the way they structured it was probably the best the league could have done. Obviously it's not ideal playing the same teams 4 times. But I mean, I was just kind of delighted to have any sort of season because at some point there we weren't sure whether we'd be playing at all this year. So just to get games and be able to compete and like compete for a playoff spot and then compete for playoff games has just been really enjoyable to be part of that. And yeah, because at one stage I wasn't sure whether we'd be playing again. So just to be playing proper organized games it's just enjoyable to be back out there after that break.
So you end up getting to have your first season with the Rowdies, and you end up being one of the team leaders in assists, one of the team leaders in chances created. It seemed like you were able to fit into what they were trying to do and utilize your strengths. But talk to me a little bit about that fit, transitioning into this team with this group of players, how it was able to work so well this season.
Yeah, no, I think we've got a really good squad and we've got a really good coaching staff. So for me, it was enjoyable to play with the group of players that we had, and the coaching staff are good to giving me information of what they're looking for. So yeah, it was quite an easy transition. But obviously, like I said, it kind of hasn't gone as planned for anyone. So there's obviously difficulties with that. It's not going as the way I thought it would. We've only playing 16 games when you'd usually play over double that amount of games. So, but I think we dealt with that, and yeah, I've really enjoyed my first season at the club here.
So speaking of the coaching staff, Obviously, benefit for Neil Collins he's been with the Rowdies in multiple capacities throughout his career. Now it's led you guys to the final. Talk to me a little bit about the biggest benefits of having him as a head coach. You mentioned a little bit about supplying you with the necessary information to get the best out of you guys. What else has he been able to help with you during this season?
Yeah, I think all of the coaching staff have got a brilliant experience as players, and they're really young, so it's easy to kind of relate with them, and the careers that both Kevin Foley, the assistant, and Neil have had in England is like incredible careers that any of us players here would love to have had. So just knowing that the level that they've played at in back in England in the Premier League and in the Championship, straight away, like they're type of people you want to learn from and try and get every ounce of information from, just to become better players and use that experience to our advantage as players.
So obviously there are a bunch of clubs. Every club has its own history, right? Whether the stadium, the supporters, or just in terms of how long they've been in existence. But with the Rowdies, obviously their history dates back to before they joined the USL in 2017. And even more historically, the stadium, Al Lang Stadium, where they've been playing, has a very long treasured history. Talk to me a little bit about your first season, being able to put on those iconic yellow and green stripes, playing at Al Lang Stadium, and just that experience to people who aren't Rowdies fans, who don't obviously get to see the experience from time to time. What has that been like?
Yeah, no, it's great, and I think it's like you say, it's a historical club, and even when I'm back home, when I told people I was signing with the Rowdies, they'd heard of the team, and obviously Joe Cole had played here, and then even like back in, like, I think maybe this would have been the 70s. I think Rodney Marsh was a big player from England, so they've had a lot of big names, and especially back in that era where American soccer was like quite popular with like all sorts of superstars coming over. Yeah, no, it's definitely pretty cool to play for a club that's kind of had that heritage.
So while I got you here, real quick, I want to look back on your time with St. Louis FC. You were part of the club for some of its great successes and some of its history, some of the great runs that they had, including that Open Cup run. And of course, this was their final season for them ceasing operations. I just want to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on your time with St. Louis FC, your conversations maybe with former teammates or former coaches, and basically, your thoughts now that they've wrapped up their season and are folding up shop.
Yeah, I had 2 amazing years there, like so many great memories. Probably the best soccer memories that I've had in my career were with St. Louis. Obviously making the playoffs that first year, and then the Open Cup win, and yeah, so many experiences. And yeah, I love being a part of the club there. I still stay in touch with a lot of the guys. I've got lifelong friends that were part of the 2 years there, and the coaching staff while I was there, I still stay in touch with. And yeah, like I haven't got a bad word to say about the experience there. And yeah, it's sad to see that the club's folding, and the whole group of players that had been there for the 3 years now have kind of got to like disperse and find new clubs or new careers. So it is kind of sad to see that side of things is everyone's going to kind of go separate ways. Yeah, it was a special club, and really, really enjoyed my time there.
So let's look ahead to Sunday's match. This is Rowdy's first appearance in the final, and you guys will get Phoenix Rising FC, one of the best offensive teams, not just this season, but of the past few seasons. It should be, a really good matchup between you guys. Your defense, which has been really successful this year as well, but of course you're one of the top scoring teams. Also, talk to me a little bit about what's going to be the key, some of the things that you're going to need to successfully do to come out of there with the victory and lift the trophy.
Yeah, I think probably just maintaining focus for 90 minutes because, like I say, they've got some fantastic players that can probably turn the game on its head and score, make a goal out of nothing, or create chances out of nothing. And I think just maintaining that focus, probably defensively, is a biggest thing going into Sunday. I think if we play the way we can, we're always going to create chances. And we'll have opportunities to score goals. And I think just maintaining focus defensively and not giving them any chances, because they've got guys that can score out of nothing. So we have to just maintain focus over the 90 minutes.
All right, Lewis, I'll get you out of here on this. Obviously, it's been a tough year for you guys, but it's also been a tough year for the fans, not having the full aesthetic there at the stadium to cheer you guys on. It's been that way across this country. But this Sunday, you guys get to host this final, biggest moment, again, in club history that you'll get to be a part of. What is your message to the supporters ahead of Sunday's match?
Yeah, no, it's been not the same. It felt like a different game without fans. But the fans down here in Tampa have been amazing. Even though there's been a limited amount of people been allowed in, they've been as loud as they could be. And it's felt like there's a lot more of them in the stadium than there actually is. And I just want to say, continue to give the guys that support. And it does give you, as a player, an extra buzz when you see a group of fans that are so passionate and want the team to do well. It gives you that a little extra buzz on game day. So yeah, just a message would be to continue what they've been doing for us, and hopefully we can get a result for them on Sunday night.
Well, I know you'll have a huge support group there for you guys, and of course you'll have some fans back here at St. Louis cheering you on, hoping that you get to feature. Tampa Bay Rowdies will be hosting Phoenix Rising FC in the USL Championship Final this Sunday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Lewis, thank you so much for joining me today, and good luck this Sunday.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
My thanks to Lewis for joining me on the show today. That'll do it for the first ever episode of the Gateway to Soccer show. My name is Josh McGee. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel to continue to get more episodes of the show. I hope to be back next week with a great guest and more great soccer to talk about. Thank you again so much for tuning in. Have a great Halloween weekend, and don't forget to vote.